Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get started on our webinar today. Today we'll be talking about stress hormones and inflammation. And we are here, me and my team, we are here to serve you. We are here to give you some information and have a great discussion. I thought I'd start today by introducing you to a patient of ours. And she's, I think, an example of someone who has a lot of the health concerns that maybe you have, because these are, we're going to be talking about stress and hormones and inflammation today. And she's a patient that came in a couple of years ago, 45-year-old woman who had a lot of these presenting sorts of symptoms. And I'm going to refer to her periodically through our conversation, through this webinar, as she moved through a process with us. So she was a prior endurance athlete. She was 45 when I met her. She had rheumatoid arthritis and she was in her mid-20s and had been on, some significant prescription medications for it. She never really felt like it was totally under control. She would have pretty significant flares. She had a lot of digestive problems that she felt happened after some of the medications started coming on board. She started having side effects and started having more and more digestive and allergy problems. She came in, and when she had met us, she had remarried, and she just said, I just feel exhausted all the time. I need something different. I need to do something different because what I'm doing isn't working. So she felt like she relied a lot on those prescription medications just to kind of get through the day. And she was worried about it. And she also, as an athlete, she wanted to be able to compete again and exercise more. And she felt like she was limited in a lot of those ways. So, and I can really relate to that. And she's an example of the kind of patient we see. And I have a lot of empathy and compassion for the patients we see, because I've also been in these sorts of situations myself. And I'll share a little bit about that with you as we go through the webinar. But this is what we come in contact with our patients and what we work on with them. So what we're going to cover in this webinar, I'm going to zoom out for a few minutes and talk a little bit bigger, on a bigger scale. First about, American healthcare and what's been going on and how that plays a part in what we experience as patients, right? And also we'll talk about how stress impacts our health and our hormones, which it certainly does. And we'll also talk about inflammation and immunity. And we'll show you some ways to take action to protect your health in a more natural way. And what I'd also really love to do in the next 45 minutes together that I have with you is really empower you to see that you have hope and there are choices. So if you come to this webinar not feeling so great or feeling like you're frustrated, you've tried different things and it's not working, I just want to give you hope. And there's a lot of options and a lot of positive choices out there. So we'll talk about some of those things. And I also want to educate you on a process that we use in our practice to help you reach your goals. And we'll offer you an option to see if there's a fit to work together to support you to get to your goals if you'd like to work with us. So, and if you stay until the end, there'll be an opportunity to book a free 15-minute discovery call with me. And that call's really just to see if perhaps there is a right fit. And I offer that at this point in time, especially now with the uncertainty of the world, because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste your time or your energy or your money. And I think I just want to offer you the option to see if there's a good fit. So that's why we do that. There we go. So we do need to have a more serious conversation from the big picture perspective about what's going on in America, because in terms of health, because I think we all would agree, maybe you'd agree, you can tell me in the chat box, do you think we have a health crisis in America? I think in America, we're taught to think if you have a medical concern, there's a medication for it. If there's an ill, there's a pill, right? And I'm a conventionally trained physician, so I went through medical school learning pharmacology and learning how to apply medications for certain medical problems. And that is one way. And I still write prescriptions sometimes, but I also do functional medicine. And by looking at things in that way, we're looking to get to the root of the problem. And if we treat things at the root level, if we can find the root of the problem, then a lot of times we don't need as much medication, or maybe no medication, and the quality of life improves. That's the goal. So I think, in our culture, in a larger sense, we have, this issue of medications as the answer for health problems all the time, and certainly they are sometimes. But I think, unfortunately, it's more common for people to be on medications than not. It's more common for people to be eating the wrong foods than not, or unhealthy foods. It's more common to be not exercising or to be overweight. So I think we don't really set ourselves up to win. We have opportunity there. So when we think about that as the backdrop, then COVID-19 comes along, right? And this is the pandemic that I think exposed this underlying sort of epidemic of health concerns in our country, and just our lifestyle and the ways we're really supporting those chronic diseases. So what we do know is that there are 133 million Americans who have at least one chronic disease. So, it sounds like a big number, but just to put it in perspective, if you think about New York City, they have 9 million people. Here in Chicago, where I am, we have almost 3 million people. This is 133 million people. And that's actually over half of the United States population, which is, I think, about 328 million people. So that's a lot. And, when COVID-19 came along, we know that 90% of the people who were hospitalized for COVID-19 had at least one chronic underlying condition. 94% of all deaths were among people with at least one underlying chronic condition. So what do we mean by chronic? I mean, chronic is, conditions are diabetes, high blood pressure, blood sugar irregularities, heart disease, lung disease, kidney disease, those sorts of things. More acute problems, if we're thinking about chronic versus acute would be someone who has a heart attack, or someone who has an appendicitis, or they break a bone, or, there's something more acute that happens. But we're really talking about the chronic things. And these are the things we can change. This is where the opportunity is. So, and we know from COVID-19 that it's these people who, among us, who have chronic conditions, who were more at risk for more complications from COVID-19, and also older adults. We know that too. So if you fall into any of those categories and you're sitting there thinking, oh, great, that's me, this is why we're talking. So stay with me, because there's things we can do. There are things you can do to improve your health overall. And the other thing that came out from COVID-19 is how obesity is really one of those chronic health conditions that we need to keep our eye on and we need to work on. We knew that there was obesity and chronic illness in the US, obviously, before this came along. But what we found out was that obese patients under 60, so these were younger people, were almost twice as likely to be hospitalized for COVID-19 as people with a normal weight. So again, if this is you, if you're thinking, well, great, technically I am obese or I'm overweight, hang on, because we've got places to go with this in a positive sort of way. But I think to get there, it helps us to see where we're coming from. And we have had some unacceptable costs with not so great outcomes. And these are costs, not only financial costs, but they're also quality of life costs and personal costs. In America, we've spent $3.5 trillion annually on healthcare. And 90% of that, so 9 out of every $10 goes to chronic health conditions like we're talking about. That's twice as much as any other developed country in the world, in the world, developed country. 70% of all deaths are caused by the top 5 chronic diseases in the United States. And we're not doing so well when we look at how we rank compared to other developed countries in the world. So we've got opportunities. And this is where, something like COVID-19 comes in, and it's a silver lining. I mean, the silver lining of this is that we see the opportunity to focus on our health. In this time, it's still an uncertain time. We're still just starting to reopen in the US, and things are kind of rolling out. And, I would ask you this, 3 years from now, do you want to look back and say, phew, I'm so glad I survived that? Or do you want to look back and think, yeah, the world went on pause for a period of time. And during that time, look what I created for myself. Look what I changed for myself, for my health. And I think we're all, kind of being posed that question, which way we want to go with this. So The point is, we do have control over a lot of things, and we have control over certain things right now. We can't stop aging, obviously, but we can do a lot to be proactive to improve our overall health. So those of you who know me and who know Danielle, our nutritionist, know that we talk quite a bit about food, and food is medicine. And it's because we see it. You know, I see patients who have chronic health conditions. This is what we do. These are the people we work with. And changing diets and changing nutrition and helping people really nourish themselves better makes a big difference. So, and also, you know, along with that, looking at how to help people balance blood sugars, because, you know, if blood sugars are not balanced, it can be a trigger for inflammation. And that's an underlying condition that's associated with all these chronic conditions. So it's something we want to address. We also want to talk about improving heart health. So that it you know, includes diet, but it also includes exercise and other things we do. We'll talk a bit about boosting our immune system, because of course, under the current circumstances with COVID-19, that's certainly in our minds. And all the things we're talking about support that. Minimizing inflammation, as I said, it's important. And there's lots of ways we can do that. And then we see a lot of patients in our practice who have autoimmune conditions of all different types. And one of the things we want to help them do is kind of calm flares of autoimmunity. But we also, you know, again, from a functional perspective, we want to pull back and look at the big picture and try to figure out where the root cause of their autoimmune condition is to begin with. And we're trying to get to the root of the problem. And if we can find causes, we can, you know, change at that level and make difference in a bigger way. And of course, balancing hormones, which is another thing we're going to be really highlighting as we talk today. So, you know, COVID-19, again, it's a wake-up call for us. It's a wake-up call for us to be more proactive. And, you know, these pillars of health are the things that we build our health on. We need all these things to be balanced and functioning and working well together to build our health. And if we don't have those things, these are the things that rob us of health or you know, make things more difficult with our health. So, and if you're just tuning in now, welcome. And we've been talking about America's health crisis and about how the underlying concern, you know, we've had COVID-19, but the underlying concern is really this very large number of us who have chronic health conditions. And that's really where we need to work. And that's where the opportunity is. And these are the things that can change. And also talking about stress, inflammation, and immunity, and how to take action to protect your health naturally. And again, if you stay till the end, we'll give you the opportunity to book a call with me, a free call, to see if there might be a fit to work with us to get to your goals. So when we think about, you know, our American health habits, let's think about this for a moment before we go on. You know, if you hear someone say, yeah, you know, I went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with a medical condition, often the next thing we think is, well, what medication did you get, or what was the treatment? And when we think about treatments, we often think about medications, as I was saying before. You know, if someone's diagnosed with high blood pressure, you know, what's the medication that you received is often the next question. And pharmaceutical companies spend a lot of money each year to train us or teach us to think this way, but they're not the only ones. They're a business. They're trying to make money. You know, the food industry does this too. I mean, if I said to you, milk does a body blank, I think all of you would probably chime in and say, it does a body good. Because we're taught to know that, right? And the incredible edible blank egg, right? So these are things that we've been taught because these are things that are marketed to us. And these are, you know, ways that businesses are trying to make money. And pharmaceutical companies, they're a bigger part of you know, our healthcare system in that sense. So, and also, let me just go back for a sec. And also we think about American sort of habits in terms of our, just how we view healthcare overall. You know, I found this interesting. This was from the Medicare Journal. And it says, care that seeks to prevent disease, promote health, and prolong and enhance the quality of life is not considered medically necessary. When I first read this, I was like, wow. But, you know, it makes sense. And it's not that Medicare is an evil. There's nothing evil about it. It's great for what it does. And so is our insurance, because insurance follows this generally too. And as a physician and also as a patient, I see this and I can understand it. But what it it doesn't do is it doesn't help us build wellness. And, it's there for the more acute things. It's there for procedures and medications and acute problems and those sorts of things. But if we want to build health and wellness, we have to kind of do it on our own or find a different way. The current system we have is more of, it manages our disease processes. It doesn't necessarily build our health. So it's kind of like I tell people, I guess, if you think about it, like comparing health insurance to your car insurance, your car insurance doesn't pay for you to rotate the tires or to, get an oil change, even though those things would increase the life of your car, right? But if you blow a tire or you're in an accident, your insurance is going to pay. And I think there's similarities there between, health insurance, car insurance, home insurance. These things all are very similar, but we tend to think our health insurance will pay for everything. But even I, came upon this and had a whole new understanding of this for myself. And it really happened, like where this all came together for me was in my mid-20s, my mid to late 20s. At that point, I was pretty sick. I had had a year of just chronic sinus infections and had had one antibiotic after the other, just repeatedly throughout the course of this whole year. And during that time, I had a lot of digestive problems. I had been, I was somewhat overweight at that point. And I had had this whole childhood and up to that point into my teens and 20s, with just lots of health problems. I had allergies. I got allergy shots. I was at the doctor a lot. I saw a gastroenterologist and had digestive problems in my teens and through my teens. And just always looking to try to understand what was going on. But I was sick a lot. I was at the doctor a lot. And I was overweight a lot during that time. And, all this happened and it kind of came to a head when I was in my 20s. At that point, I was feeling awful. I'd been on all these medications and I felt not well and I didn't know what to do. So it was recommended that I get sinus surgery. So I did. And I felt marginally better for a little while and then I felt worse. And then I got diagnosed with asthma. And then I was like, I'm done. That's it. No more. I have, done what I was supposed to do. I've seen the specialist. I've taken my medications. I've, used my insurance. I've been a good patient and I feel terrible. So I was like, I'm stepping outside the box and doing something different. And I have to tell you, I did step outside the box and I did something different and it changed my life. It absolutely changed the way I feel and it changed my health from that point forward. Not that I haven't had other health issues come up, but I've had a whole different approach to how to manage them. So, and at that point, I was just getting ready to go into medical school. So this was an experience I carried as a patient going into medical school, knowing that I wanted to be a physician and I love medicine. And I also knew that I wanted to help patients build their health because what was lacking for me at that point in time was there was nobody. I had lots of people who helped me with little pieces, and I had lots of people helping with their specialty. But there was nobody who was stepping back and looking at the big picture and saying, let me help you build your wellness. Let me help you get better. Let me help you build wellness, Amy. And that's what I love to do for people. So that's why I'm here. That's why we do what we do. That's why we talk about our practice and our programs, because we're building wellness and we're trying to build communities around this because this is how it grows. So, and, often patients will say to me, I had no idea I could feel so good because I felt so bad. And I say, I get it. When you feel so bad for so long, you don't even know how good you can feel. So this is where we want to go with this. So when we think about that, at this point, I would say to you, even just for yourself, like do a kind of a body check. Do you have symptoms that you're just feeling like, oh, I don't feel good and this has been bothering me? Do you have symptoms of trouble concentrating, brain fog? That's a common one we see with patients. And that can be from lack of sleep. It can be dietary. It can be an indication that there's inflammation. And it's more brain inflammation when people talk about brain symptoms like intense fatigue or brain fog. How about bowel and bladder difficulties? Do you feel like you're not digesting your food very well? Do you feel bloated a lot or uncomfortable? Those are very common problems that we help people with that make a big difference because if you have inflammation in your gut, then that does have a systemic sort of effect on how you feel and other symptoms you can have. How about just fatigue? Like I was saying before, this can be related to just not sleeping well. It can be related to diet. It can be related to, a variety of things. It can also be related to inflammation. How about temperature regulation? This is one I hear a lot about, especially we're talking about hormones today. I hear a lot of people come in, particularly women, saying, I have the coldest hands and feet, or I am cold all the time, or I'm hot all the time. I'm sweating. I wake up in the middle of the night. These are things that are tip-offs that there's some things we can look for and work on. So, and, like our patient that I mentioned when we got started, the patient with rheumatoid arthritis, she came in complaining or reporting a lot of these symptoms and reporting joint pain and swelling. So these are things we work on with patients a lot. And when I think about several of these symptoms, I also think about a patient of ours. Her name's Lisa. And when she came in to see us, she had thyroid symptoms and more digestive symptoms. And she talked about really feeling like she wanted to kind of reduce some inflammation. She had joint pain and just no energy. She had been active in the past and she was overweight at that point. And it really bothered her. So what she said after working with us is she said, it's been a life-changing experience. I'm down 30 pounds and I feel better than I have in 20 years. From having tons of energy in my joints to not aching to not getting sick. Dr. Weiler is so caring, gives you her full attention, never rushed. Everything is customized specifically for you, which is what I needed. They also educate you so you understand their plan and also you can make better decisions going forward. I cannot recommend and thank Dr. Weiler and her staff enough. And that's the point. We want to teach you or teach our patients, tools so that you can take care of yourself. You can get yourself out of problems. You can see going forward that you are more independently well yourself. That's our goal. And if we think about other symptoms that you might have, and certainly in these times that we're in right now of uncertainty, there's been a lot more patients just reporting feelings of feeling kind of depressed or feeling more anxious. And going along with that, also having trouble with sleep. This is a big one that I've been hearing about even more recently. And this is important because if we're not sleeping, we're not able to support our immune systems. We're increasing inflammatory responses. We're setting ourselves up to have more difficulty with weight loss. So there's a lot that ties in. How about pain? Is this something, how do you feel in your body in terms of pain? A lot of patients who come in and they'll talk about, having recurrent migraine headaches or having body pain in certain areas, whether it's muscles or joints. And these, again, are signs of inflammation. So these are manifestations of something else that's going on. And weight gain. In America, there's a large number of Americans that are overweight or obese. So this becomes a significant issue for our health. And, why is that? Well, there's consequences to obesity. It's linked to a lot of those chronic health conditions that we started talking about at the start of the webinar. So, when you think about all these things and you think about where we are at, overall and what our personal goals are, when you think about your own personal goals for your health, I would say to you, based on how you're feeling and what you've tried, are you willing to try something different? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to feel better? Is it just that you need the right tools or the right direction? And this is where, these pillars come back in. And this, again, when I talked to you about this earlier, this is a plan that is very similar to the kind of plan that I followed for myself when I was in my 20s. It's taking a lot of these foundational pieces and trying to do a lot of supportive things at once in an organized sort of way. So sometimes, maybe you've tried one or two, but it's really about looking at all of them as a part of a major foundation. So let's talk about them because these pieces are things that we have control over. And this is where, the proactive piece comes in. This is where we can make choices and we can make change. So obviously stress, right, is an issue in America and around the world right now. And there's different kinds of stress. I mean, there's good stress, there's positive stress, and there's negative stress. So we'll talk a little bit about the negative stress in particular. And this can involve, traumatic injuries. physical kinds of injuries. It can involve chemical stressors, which is certainly one of the things that we deal with in our practice with patients. We look a lot at environmental triggers and inflammatory triggers because they do trigger inflammation. They impact hormones. These can be hormone disrupting and endocrine disrupting things, chemicals from the environment. Also, though, I think the largest sort of segment of stress at this point in time is emotional stress. And this is important because our adrenals, which are the glands that create and make stress hormones for us in our bodies, they'll respond in times of stress, whatever it is, whether it's physical stress or whether you're sick with the flu or whether you have emotional stressors and you're feeling upset. They don't care. They're going to respond to you and support you in times of stress. And this is where emotional stress can tie in very much to overall health. It's tied into inflammation. It's tied into how your digestion is working. If you have good digestion, it's tied into sleep, all these things. So these are the things we work on. The other thing that we have control over is nutrition. So I would ask you, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? When you think back, or what did you have for dinner? What are your usual snacks? Would it fit this definition? This is a nice definition of nutrition, that which is eaten to sustain life, provide energy, and promote growth and repair of tissues. I would say, not everything in the American diet, the standard American diet, would necessarily fit that. I think there's a lot of things that even in the grocery store, when you go in the grocery store, that are more food-like than true foods, especially things that have artificial chemicals or artificial flavors or colors, those sorts of things, that kind of stuff. So there's ways we can make change to that. Also, patients come in and they'll talk about hormone imbalances. Lots of patients who will come in saying, I feel like my hormones are off, or I feel like my thyroid is off. That's one I hear a lot about. And I show this slide because, sometimes the way we deposit fat on our bodies, on our frames, gives us a clue about the types of hormone imbalances we may have. It's not the only clue, but it's one. And, often patients will come in and they might have, period menstrual irregularities, and they have brain fog, they're tired. They might have libido, low libido, those sorts of things. I think about estrogen, and I think about that imbalance there. If it's more extreme imbalance with estrogens, we can even tip into things like increased risk for certain cancers or heart disease. If hormones are imbalanced in terms of adrenal function, we just talked about how that ties in with stress. And I often too have patients who will come in and they'll say, I just feel like no matter what I do, I can't lose weight. And I will think to myself, I need to look into adrenal balance as a bigger picture, along with digestion and other things. That's one of the pieces that I'll look at, because these people sometimes tend to come in saying, I just can't get the weight off my midsection. So that's something for us to consider. Patients who come in with thyroid symptoms, I probably have the most questions about thyroid. They come in and they might have trouble losing weight, or they might have trouble gaining weight, depending on what's going on with their thyroid. They might have trouble with sleep, where they're sleeping too much or they can't sleep. They might have palpitations if they're having one type of thyroid issue versus another. They might have digestive problems, skin problems, dry hair, all these things. There can be many things. Thyroid affects many different organs. And also, our livers need to be functioning properly, because to have a balance with hormones, we need to have a healthy functioning liver, because part of what the liver does is it helps us use our hormones, and it metabolizes the metabolites of our hormones, which are the byproducts of our hormones. Some of those things can cause more trouble if they build up. So we want them to be metabolized out. So we're looking at these things to be more in balance. And when I think about this sort of picture, think about a patient who, her name's Irene. She's a retired nurse. When she came to us, she was menopausal. She was postmenopausal at that point. And she'd had a lot of stressors, just been through quite a lot with her family. They'd had several things and some losses and going on in the family. And when she came in, what brought her in, though, is she had gone to her primary care doctor and she was told that her blood pressure and her cholesterol were up. And she said, I don't know that I want to take medications. I want to look for another way. So here's what she said. She had both elevated cholesterol and blood pressure, but didn't want to go the prescription route. Dr. Weiler met with me and actually listened. After we decided it was a good match, I began the 6-month program. Between individual appointments and group classes led by Danielle, who's our functional nutritionist, who's running our chat box, I not only learned so much, but my weight and blood pressure was in normal range and my cholesterol is on its way down. I feel great. And she was with us, it's been probably over 2 years now. And she just sent me an email just in the past couple months since this has all been going on this spring. And we had emailed back and forth. And although she's moved away, she's in a warmer place, which is good for her. She's still doing very well. She's doing great. She's applying the tools she's learned and she's doing great. So this stuff, it works. And me and my patients, we can be here to be examples, to talk to you and show you examples of how making these sorts of changes really, really make a difference. And, fitness, this is another thing we have control over. And people either go, when I talk about fitness with them, they love it. Maybe I'd ask you, do you have a fitness routine? Do you love your fitness routine? Or do you feel like, I don't know what to do? I think if you have a fitness routine and it's working for you, great. If you don't, or you just don't know what to do, take heart, because I think that's often what I hear from patients. They feel like it should be, they think it's hard, and they think it's more like they have the sense of like no pain, no gain. So if it needs to be hard to be good. And I think I try to work with patients to understand that we want you to find something that you can sustain, that you can do and not dislike, in your life, that you can continue to do as a routine for the long term, because that's where the benefits come in. It's this recurrent sort of pattern of exercise or something that you're doing. And it doesn't have to be as hard as you think a lot of times. What I don't want people to do, though, is I don't want them to make a commitment to themselves that they're going to, take the dog for a walk every day, or they're going to jog every day. But then, with the first rain, this is what happens. This is not what we want. We want you to, not pick something hard that you're not going to be able to sustain. We want you to pick something that's going to work. So that's what we work on with our patients. And, in terms of detoxification, I mentioned this a little bit before with the chemicals. These are stressors on the body. I think it's one of the most misunderstood parts of what we work on with patients. I think when patients hear detoxification, they think about sort of this event of like a 5-day cleanse or, a 10-day cleanse or whatever. But the truth is, in your body, you have detoxification pathways that are naturally working for you all the time. And so my goal with patients is to help teach you about them and to help you understand how to open the drains and make them work more efficiently, or, support them to work more efficiently. And the things that, kind of bind us up or that we need to be detoxifying are chemicals like we see here, even medications. While there might be some benefit on one hand, they all need to be passed through our liver and their or kidneys, or, need to be detoxified. Things that we're exposed to in the environment, like cigarette smoke, that's another one. Even foods we eat, sugar, it's a big inflammatory trigger, and it's something that our body needs to detoxify from. So this is where we work with patients to teach you support to do this, so that you can support your own body's detox pathways, that it doesn't have to be like a stressful 5-day event that you put yourself through. And, as far as immune function, this is something we have some control over, in the sense that we want to build our overall health, because our immune system, it's our natural defense system that's working for us all the time, no matter where we go and what we come in contact with. We're always coming in contact with microbes or viruses or whatever. And I love this quote and put this in. This was from early on, one of the first cases of COVID-19 in Australia. And this patient was studied, and really what it highlights to us is that if we are doing our, what we can to build our health, then we should generally be able to trust that our immune system will be able to defend us. And we will be able to fight things off, whether it's COVID or whether it's the flu or whatever it is. And then, of course, if we're talking about the immune system, we have to talk about the gut. Up to 80% of our immune system is housed in our gut. So it's important for us to think about our digestion. So even as you're sitting there, I would ask you, how do you feel? Like, how's your tummy feel today? How do you generally feel? Do you feel kind of bloated? Do you feel like you have gas or stomach upset? Do you feel you have reflux, or are things running too fast or too slow? These are tip-offs and clues that there's probably some support that needs to be, brought to your digestive system. And that's important to building your overall immune system and your overall health, and to lowering your inflammatory load. And when patients come in with inflammatory symptoms, like Heather, the patient with rheumatoid arthritis, one of the first places we went with her, the first place we went with her, was helping her look at her diet and heal her gut. And that alone will lower the inflammatory load of the body, and systemically it lowers the inflammatory symptoms people have a lot. It's different for different people, but this becomes a big part of what we do, and it's important. It's also important to have a good functioning digestive system because it helps us use our hormones better. And this is where there's this link between gut and brain, but it's also important too because our neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA and dopamine and different things, we make them in our body. And a lot of them we make in our GI tract. So we have to be taking good care of that. So how do we pull all this together? Well, we get data also. We find that just getting some testing is really helpful. But have you ever been to the doctor? I mean, this happened to me, obviously, in my 20s and at other times in life, where I've gone and had some concerns, or I've run some labs, and the labs were normal. But have you always felt normal? So maybe you were told, like, no, your labs look okay. I know you're tired and you're in pain, but yeah, I hear this a lot. And, one question would be, why is that? Number one, it could be that perhaps we're not looking at the right labs. Maybe there's other tests to look at, which is what we do. We have functional testing that we look at that's a little different. But also, even if it is the normal, a typical sort of lab that you might get, why is it that it says I feel normal, but I don't? Well, I didn't understand this for a long time, but when you go to a lab to have a lab drawn, let's say you have, I'll show you on the next screen, a TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. It's kind of gives us a sense of how your thyroid's doing. Let's say you have this lab drawn. Well, the lab you go to might say that the normal range is between 0.3 and 5.7, like I have on the screen. That's their sort of norm. But how did that lab come to that quote unquote normal range? It's because they took all the people who ever had that particular test at their lab and they put them on a bell curve, and they figured out what the norm or the normal was. Now, that's one way of looking at it. But when you think, well, when half of America has at least one chronic health condition, is that quote unquote normal really optimal? And I would say probably not. So in the case of TSH, even though that range is really wide, the functional range, or the more optimal range that we're looking for, is usually narrower. So I'm usually looking to try to get people somewhere in the 1 to 2 range, or give or take. And then we also look at how they're feeling, because the labs are part of it, but not all of it. So, looking at tests, we have to figure out what you've got, what's going on. So we look to order tests that are going to help me get to the root of what the issue is, to help me understand the cause. And I can have 10 people who come in with very similar symptoms, but when I run tests and try to figure out what's going on, I find that they might have 10 different reasons. And this is where functional medicine is, I think, really helpful, because there's a question of always going, why is that? Why? Why do they have those symptoms? What's underneath it? Because that's where we've got to dig to do the detective work to get to the answer to help you. So, and then, stepping back and pulling this all together, how do we treat the patient overall, and how do we pull these pieces together? Well, the way we do it, and oftentimes patients will come in and they'll say, well, Dr. Weiler, I already did a nutrition plan. I mean, I've been on an elimination diet a couple of years ago, and I work out, and I did a detox, a 5-day detox, and I've done these things. And I'll say to them, that's great. That's great. And these things help you understand what we're doing or what we're going to do. But have you reached your goals yet? And if they say, well, no, then I say, then let's take you through a process. Let's look at this and take you through a system, because there's some opportunity here to help you get to your goals in a different way. And I think for all of us as human beings, if we lack a system, then sometimes we don't make it. We don't get to the goals. It's kind of like, if you're trying to use Google Maps on your phone and you plug in the address where you want to go, and it spits out directions and you start following along, and all of a sudden it tells you to turn right, when you're supposed to turn left, and then I don't end up where I'm supposed to be. So I think sometimes that happens because we try to pick and choose, some of the things we want to do to improve our health, but it's really working on all of these things in a coordinated way that makes a difference when we're talking about shifting around these chronic conditions and preventing problems, and building health. This is where it begins. And also, I think, for myself for sure, and I think for a lot of patients, I have seen that it really helps to have a mentor involved in this process as well. I've had a mentor in personal life and in my professional career. And for me, it's very, very helpful to have someone who's a little further along, who's been through something that I'm trying to work through, who can coach me through the process, because it's taking all that information together and making it happen. So, it's kind of like, too, if you wanted to fly a plane. Let's say I've never flown a plane. If I wanted to learn, or you wanted to learn, I guess we could watch videos and we could, take tutorials or whatever. But at some point, somebody's going to have to get in the cockpit with us and be our flight instructor and sit by us to help us distill the information and get us off the ground, right? And that's what I'm talking about. So, what holds people up? And I think it's that. I have lots of patients who come in who have lots of information. They're very intelligent people who have done informed and have done a lot of research and, know a lot. But it's really about helping them take all that information and distill it and make it happen and put it into action. And that's where I think the opportunity is. There's so much literature coming out regarding autoimmune disease and its links to gut health. I needed someone who could coach me through putting that knowledge into practice. Her evaluation program is thorough, and she spends real quality time looking at you and looking at the data and making recommendations. Probably the best money I've ever spent on anything medical related. She helped me change my life for the better. And the last time I talked to Heather, she was starting to compete again. She had cut back on her medication significantly and felt that really moving through dietary changes and some of the things we had worked on with her had given her tools to continue to do that for the longer term. So, don't put this off. I think we all as human beings think, oh, I know, I want to change that, or I feel like I need to work on this or that. And then we think, well, I'll do it later. But if not now, when? If COVID-19 has done nothing, I think it has shaken us all up and opened our eyes to the fact that, our health is important. And if we've got that, we've got a lot. So, we don't have 9 lives like the proverbial cat who looks pretty lazy. We have our one life and our one body. And when you think about wanting to make change, if you say, okay, yeah, I want to work on this, then I ask you to ask yourself, why? What's your reason for wanting to make change? Is it that, you want to do this so you can go back to school, or you can change careers, or you can travel, or, do those sorts of things? Is it because you want to be here for people that you love? Because you want to be here to start a family? You want to be healthy, to have children of your own, or maybe you want to be here so you can be here for your grandchildren and play with them. Or maybe you want to be here so you can be here with your spouse, or meet a spouse or a partner, or to be here with a community of friends, or to find a community of friends that you can join with. What's your why? I think that really, roots us in our goals and helps people get there. And for me, my why is vast, and I'm grateful. It's my husband and my daughter here. It's the rest of my family. It's my friends. It's that I've had my own struggles with my health that have led me in a path, or along a path, so that I can do functional medicine. I became a physician. I have a practice like this that I love, and I feel like I have a real mission, drive to help people find the answers they're looking for and to live better quality lives. So, can you predict the future of your health? I would say largely yes. And, we know a lot about epigenetics and genetics. And we know that, we are handed a certain amount of genetic material from our parents that we can't change. But we now know that that's somewhere between 5 and 20%. So at least 80% of our health is in our own hands. It's all the things I've been talking to you about. So how do we get there? Well, part of it is just really trying to figure out what's going on and ordering the right tests to help us get some clues and some information, to get data, so we can figure out what the underlying causes are that are driving the problem. And then, if we can focus on what the root of the problem is, we can treat at that level, and we don't have to worry about just trying to kind of manage the symptoms, which in the short run we might do, but in the long run we want to dig down and really get to the root, because we want to correct the dysfunction, the problems. We don't want to have to just continue to treat to meet whatever the lab numbers we want to get to. So we're looking to address the body overall as a whole system, and we're looking to do it in a way that's systematic so we don't miss things, and to do it with a coach and a mentor and with support. And that's another thing in our programs. There's other people who are involved who are working through the process as well, and patients find great support in that, in addition to working with me and with my staff. So what's next? Well, as I mentioned early on, I'd like to offer you the option of scheduling a complimentary call with me. If you feel like, yes, I am at a point where I need to do something different, I want to make a change, I want to work on this, I want to do this, schedule a call. What we would do is it's a free phone call. We just really want to see if maybe we're a right fit to work together. And in that call, I'd want to just listen to you, first of all, and hear what you're going through, hear what's been going on and your concerns are for your health, what you might have tried before that hasn't really worked, or maybe has worked but not enough. And then just tell you a little bit about our practice and our team, and so we can see if we can help you. And if that is something that, if it seems like that's a right fit for you and us, and you want to schedule a first appointment, then at that point we would talk to you about how to do that. So if you want to schedule a call with me, you can just click on, I think there should be a book now button up on, I think it's the top right-hand corner of your screen. Just schedule the phone call. And if you hear me talking about this and you think, yes, I'm in, I'm doing it, great. If you hear me talking about this and you think, no, now is not the time, great, I respect that. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, maybe I'm kind of like, if you're on the fence, then I would say to you, why not now? It's a free call, and it's to get some information about something that you're really thinking about. So book it, do it. Thank you very much for spending time with us. If you have questions that, like I said, weren't answered, go ahead and schedule. So have a great day. Thanks so much for checking in with us, and we will talk with you soon.